And it is showtime. Hello, everybody. This is Unfound Live for March 23rd of 2026. We're almost 3 months into this beautiful year. It's going fast. Of course, even next week we'll still be in the month of March, but it seems to be going fast for me. I've been very busy, and I have a fantastic show planned for all of you tonight. As you are watching tonight, I hope you will give this show a thumbs up, subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you are watching on Facebook, you can go to the group and become a member there. Go share and like the page. You know what we do here. Yeah, I did, Charlie. I'm going to talk about it in a moment. And I'll actually have a picture. But I was actually talking to your mother and your father through texting about it today while I was on the treadmill. But yes, it happened today. Uncle Brian joined me. I'll tell everybody about it in a moment. But yes, there's a variety of ways you can support what we do here at Unfound. Right there on the screen, patreon.com/Unfound podcast. Also on PayPal. And then also, as you are watching in the chat, you can hit the super chat button and you can hit the join button if you are watching on YouTube. You get some stuff there that other people do not get. Maybe some things early. People on YouTube and on Patreon get their episodes a day early. And if you are at the $5 a month level on Patreon, you get and above, you get the episodes ad free. So all of you might want to consider that if you could. As you can see in the title for tonight's live show, I'm going to discuss the disappearance of a mother and father who left behind 5 children. It's the disappearance from 1995, so 31 years ago. That is their disappearances. I will be analyzing them tonight. Still unsolved. It's the disappearance out of Ohio. Don't know how well it is known, but I came across it, caught my attention. Also, you've probably heard it because it's made national news. There was a realtor who was murdered way back in 2011, and just within the past week, they have charged another, I don't necessarily think it was a realtor, but also somebody in the real estate business, a woman, with this woman's murder. Her name was Ashley Okland, Okland. I'm going to take a look at that tonight. Also want to tell you a little bit more about this venture that I'm starting with consulting, helping families behind the scenes, giving them good advice. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. Probably going to touch upon Nancy Guthrie a little bit. Also, seemingly a guy who's been forgotten is this football coach who went missing last year, like partway through the high school football season. He is still missing. I think I want to touch upon that. Also, we had the crashing of a jet yesterday into a fire truck at LaGuardia Airport. My understanding is LaGuardia Airport might be still closed because of this. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Maybe I'll get to that before we are done tonight. So there's a lot to do. And we do have a new episode this Friday. I'll be doing the interview tomorrow. I think you're all going to be very interested to hear about that as well, where the disappearance might be connected to a very, very well-known 20th century novel, if you can believe it. But the discussion starts tonight. You can see here in the chat talking to my nephew Charlie. I bought a car today. Yep, I did it. It took me almost 2 months to find the right car. Now, granted, I thought I had found the right car a couple times, but I was a day late and $1 short, I guess you could say. But I had found a few that I had liked, but they got sold out from under me. And mainly because for all of these cars, well, except the one, I did look at one here, if you'll remember, over a month ago here locally that just wasn't going to cut it. Just too many things going on with that car. But I had been looking for a 2011 to 2014 Mustang GT with a manual transmission for almost 2 months. And what brought this on was I was perfectly fine pretty much with my Hyundai Sonata, but it started using oil. Really noticed that when I drove up to see my dad in Pennsylvania back in November. Really noticed it. And it used oil coming back. Of course, I got back just fine. But I took it in to get looked at, and it was just diagnosed as this is just something with these engines. As long as you keep putting oil in the engine, probably be fine. Probably fine for a very long time. But I want all of you to know, if this hadn't happened, probably I would still be driving my Hyundai Sonata around. But when a car starts using a quart of oil just about every 1,000 miles, I have to start wondering, well, what exactly am I doing, here? What exactly is the plan? The problem can't be fixed. So how long do you want to keep doing that, Ed? And I decided I didn't want to keep doing that very long. The car is perfectly drivable. And of course, I have been driving it since November, December, right up here until March. It's just you really, really got to keep an eye on the oil. Well, back in January, I decided, it's time to make a move on a car. And I really wanted to get something that interested me, that wasn't, let's just say, a boring, reliable vehicle, though Mustangs can be very reliable. Wanted something a little more sporty, a little something along with my personality, a little more what I've been used to prior years in my life, more going along with my attitude toward life and everything. And so I looked at my budget and I figured out that what I could afford to spend on a car with cash. And wow, look at you, Jay. How about that? Maybe that's why you have GT 500. Yeah, fantastic. Well, that car would certainly be faster than mine, but yes. So I was looking. Almost bought a car in North Carolina. Almost got a couple cars in South Carolina. Had looked at cars online on Car Gurus, Carfax, Auto Trader. Talked to a dealer in Missouri, all over the place. Talked to a lot of different people about a lot of different cars. And what happened, it was just by accident what happened last week. This car, this time last week, I did not even know about this car. Had no idea it even existed. But what I did was I opened up the parameters just a little bit, and I decided I was going to take a chance looking at cars that had been in accidents before, not salvage titles or rebuilt titles or anything, but cars that maybe had, been in some fender benders in the last so many years. And I opened that up, and what do you know? I just changed one of the parameters, because you can do these really focused searches on any of those sites. All I did was opened up the parameter to include cars that had been slightly damaged in their existence. And Carfax is one of the places that documents that. And as soon as I did that last Wednesday. Just that, well, let's take a chance on this. And this car popped up. And it was in Port Charlotte. It was at a really, really, really good price. And I'll tell you why here, I think, in a moment. And just, it was a 6-speed. It was a 2011. It was red. And one of the other main things was it was still pretty much stock condition. It didn't look like it had been hammered. It only had 2 owners. But it had been wrecked about 50,000 miles ago in 2014. The left front had been hit. Carfax said it was minor damage, was not, wasn't totaled and rebuilt or anything like that. And the good news is after it was wrecked and got fixed, like I said, somebody or a couple people drove it for another 50,000 miles. And so that was really a plus in my mind. And I think that this car's life started as a Ford executive vehicle in Illinois. And like I said, I'm only the 3rd owner of this vehicle, which is also very rare. Not unusual to see Mustangs out there, 5 or 6 owners over, 15 years. At least 3 or 4 owners. And of course, Mustangs get raced, Mustangs get hammered, they get stuff put on them, aftermarket, all sorts of stuff. And the only thing that this had on it was an aftermarket air filter on it. The rest of the car, completely stock. The rims, the exhaust, the intake, everything. The interior, everything. And I was like, wow, I better get on this. And it was in Port Charlotte, which is only 2 hours away from me. I mean, I just could not believe it. After looking at cars in North Carolina and Missouri and everything, here's a car 2 hours away, 6-speed, red, black leather interior, and it was at the right price. Because a lot of these dealers are asking too much for them. I know what the market is now. And so I called on it, talked to the salesman there who I met today. And he said, I asked him, would he mind if I had somebody independently look at it? I'll pay somebody to go look at it independently. Somebody who works for me, is going to be there, in my best interests. He said, no problem. Person went, looked at the car on Thursday afternoon. I got the report on Friday afternoon. And I called this place on Saturday morning early, like first thing, because I was so afraid that somebody else was going to buy this car. I was really, really afraid because, like I said, I've lost at least 3 vehicles over the last month and a half that probably I should have had, but just didn't act fast enough. And really, it was in my price range. I didn't even try to deal with the guy. Didn't even try to say, well, I'll take less for, I'm really only willing to pay less. That's how good of a price it was. He gave me the total. I said, no problem. I'll be there Monday morning, which was today. And went down there. My brother Brian came over last night. He stayed over. We had a sleepover, me and my brother Brian. First thing this morning, we get up. We get in his truck. We go down to Port Charlotte. I take it for a test drive to make 100% sure. Brother Brian went with me. I scared the crap out of him in the car. It was the first time I drove a stick in 25 years of manual transmission, but I did pretty well. And got on it a little bit here and there, brought it back, gave the dealership the check, and I said, thank you very much. Filled out the paperwork and drove it back here today. And I'm really happy about it. Now, you may be wondering, well, how did you get this good deal? Well, you have to understand that, first of all, being that it is a manual transmission car, a lot of people don't want those. In fact, most Mustangs that are sold even to this day are automatics. 6 speeds, going back to that time, maybe only like 1/3 of them were 6 speeds. And then, of course, because they're 6-speeds, they tend to get hammered more, popping clutches, doing burnouts, and all these things. Not to say automatics don't get raced too. They do. In fact, the automatic Mustangs these days are very fast. The transmissions on them are very good. But 5-speeds, 6-speeds in these cars, they tend to get hammered more. So a lot of people don't want them. Also, these transmissions, if they are hammered, they tend to go bad. So people stay away from them. This particular car, shifting very smooth, clutch was great. But the car, I think the reason it sat at this dealership for so long, and it's a car show tonight because it's my show. I think it sat because the car does have some blemishes. All 4 wheels on the car are the stock rims. I love the stock rims, although I'm probably going to end up getting others eventually. Other ones. I have an idea. But all of them have curb rash. The car's been maybe parallel parked or something, and they've ground up against a sidewalk or a curb. All 4 of the wheels have that. Also, the hood has some bubbling because the aluminum and the metal or something, how it interacts. There's bubbling along the front edge of the hood. There are some dents and scrapes, particularly on the driver's door, but maybe if you're not looking for them, you don't necessarily see them. But the car has things. There's the rear bumper has been scraped or something. Maybe they backed into a pole or something. There are blemishes on the car. And I can see if somebody is just going and looking at it, how they might be like, oh, I don't know if, everybody's looking for that perfect car. Whereas me, I didn't care about that stuff as much because I want this to be my daily driving car. I don't want it to be pristine. I don't want to worry about it. I'm going to go park it in a grocery store parking lot. I'm going to park it at Starbucks or wherever else, at Trivia. And if it's perfect, the last thing I want to do is worry about somebody, opening their door and dinging it or something like that. So that was my mentality, which I think is a little different from everybody else's. And so that's why when I looked at it and found out it had these problems, I'm like, you know what? That really doesn't bother me that much. Whereas I think it would bother other buyers. And like I said, I think that's why it sat for a while at this place, because it sat there since maybe the end of last year, and they lowered the price on it. And then I came along. I drove it home today, 100 miles from Port Charlotte back here. Fantastic. Has a wheel sensor issue, but the tires really need to be changed on it. The tire tread is good, but the tires are old. So I am going probably within the next month, get new tires anyway, and then I'll have that sensor looked at. That's the only thing that popped up on the whole way home. An hour, ran great. It was just fantastic. So I went and got it. Like I said, I even posted a picture of it in a Mustang forum where they just specialize in those particular years. And I put the price in there, and even somebody said, man, that's a fantastic price. Fantastic. So it's red, and I'm going to, so if you're looking, I know a lot of you don't even look at me when I do the show, but if you want to see a picture of the car, I'm going to put it up on the screen right now. Here you go. This is it. This is parked downstairs, and yes, it has my personalized Unfound license plate on it. Here it is right here. That is a 2011 Mustang GT manual transmission. It has the electronics package, which means it has like a GPS screen on it and everything, but it's 2011 technology. I'm going to get that switched out too. It has the 373 gears instead of the 355 gears. Those were an option. And it has a couple other options on it, but those are like the main ones. It has black leather interior, and it is really nice. Like I said, if you're just looking at it like this, It's great. It looks like a show car. It is not a show car. It's a 2011. It has 81,000 miles on it. And like I said, I got it for a what I would call I didn't steal it. No, I did not steal it. It was just once I got to know the market, I thought, here's what I can expect to spend at particular mileage, particular condition, and that's exactly what it was. Drove it home. Air conditioning was fantastic. Clutch great. Transmission great. I even went down this evening after it had been parked in its lot space for a few hours to see if there are any leaks. No leaks. Looked under the car. Little surface rust on one particular small piece of metal there. It's no big deal. The everything is stock on it. So there you go. The search for the next car for me is done. And really, I don't drive a lot of miles these days, so I don't really. It's going to probably be a while before I even come close to 100,000 miles. But that is what I'm driving now. And even my brother Brian, who went with me down there, was like, "Oh man, this is." And he even pulled up beside me as we were coming home in his truck on the 75. And he said to me, "Yep, you look like you should be driving that car, Ed." Absolutely. So that's my new car. It's not new. It's 15 years old. It's a funny thing. It's It's 5 years older than my Hyundai, which I still have. So I'm actually going backwards in years. And kind of backwards even in technology a little bit, but there you go. And nobody is more surprised about it than I am. But you want to see another picture? Did you not see that picture, Sub Rosa? Did you see the picture? I'll post it one more time if anybody missed it. There it is. Sounds good. It's very fast. It has, from the factory, 412 horsepower, 390 foot-pounds of torque. It really, really, really gets up and goes. Not as fast as new Corvettes or Lamborghinis or anything, but you get on it, it's a little scary. It really is. So there you go. That is, let's see who's in here, by the way. Hello, Charlie. Yep. Fishing. What's going on with you? Yep, I got it. Hello, Glenn from Michigan. What's going on? Amy, Lori, D. Jay, Ed, seriously, I've been a Mustang guy for 25 years. Well, I've been a Mustang guy since 1990, Jay. I actually had a white 1990 Mustang GT. I got it new in 1990. It was bought for me as a gift, if you can believe it. Yeah, I was so spoiled. Yeah, the car that I had, in the 90s was a white Mustang GT, Jay, in 1990. So I go back to that. The Shelby GT 500s, they're very fast, Jay. Run rings around my car, but it does have your GT 500s do have the supercharger and everything, though, right? Right? Yeah. 2011 to 2014, I think, is my favorite of the newer body styles in the 2000s. Hello, the cake. Hello, LaFord. Yeah, thank you, Jay. You're very kind. Dee Dee, thank you. LaFord, thank you. Hello, Sub Rosa. Yeah, thank you, Sub Rosa. Yeah, 373 gears. Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, the Fox body. Exactly, Jay. Yeah. So that's my new car. It's going to be something that, back in the day, I used to like to get out and just drive around. When I had my Mustang back in the 1990s, I would just go out and drive around, and, I think I'm probably going to do that with, just to get out and go out, into the middle of Florida and just cruise some of these 2-lane roads and things even north of me, going in maybe to some areas that I've never been to in Florida before. Just take some daily drives, maybe on a Sunday or something. That's exactly what I am looking to do with this car. You updated to the Kenny Bell. I'm going to have to get back into this. There's so much I don't know about these cars, Jay. Like I said, want to get a new screen. New, the electronics package, get updated to Android Play or CarPlay or whatever for the center console. And I'm going to need to get tires for it. And I'm going to upgrade the tires, go to 255s. But then eventually going to get different rims for it, even though I love the stock rims, but just to be a little different. So I've looked at some things. As far as performance items, we'll just have to see, Jay. We'll just have to see. But thank you. Upgraded to the Kenny Bell. Very good. So there you go. You do not know how much time and work and money I put into finding this car. The amount of Carfaxes I printed out or bought, the amount of PPIs I did, pre-purchase inspections by text going to look at cars. I don't even want to get into, it was in the 4 figures trying to find the right car. And then this one came, and I think it's good. We'll see. I'll let you know. Maybe I'll go to start it tomorrow and it'll blow up. But I don't think so. I don't think so. Now the quest is find a good local mechanic that I can trust or I can take the car to. That'll be the next thing. So, Jay, I've seen you in here before. I did not know you're a Mustang guy. Yeah, I've been a Mustang guy. Stock too, which is cool. Yeah, that's what I want, Jay. That's what I want. All right, so I will keep you posted as I drive this car. And I want to reiterate, I did not spend a ton of money on it. It is a 15-year-old car. I don't want all of you to think that I'm rich or anything else. It's a 15-year-old car with 81,000 miles on it, which is I knew what I was getting into when I decided to do this. But I did pay cash for it because I don't believe in car payments. So I looked at my budget. I even talked to ChatGPT. I went through my finances with AI, and the ChatGPT said, here's probably what you can safely spend in cash on a car. And I went with that. And I actually bought this car, even with taxes and everything, below my budget. So I'm really, really happy about that as well. So I have some money left over should things pop up for tires and things. I'm really happy about that as well, to be able to buy a car under my budget. Even with the taxes and everything, I stayed below my budget. I'm really happy about that. So there you go. All right, let's move on to other stuff. Of course, if you want to ask me any car questions, I'll happily answer them tonight. But that's all I really have to say. I've been talking about it so much in here. I've spent 20-some minutes talking about it, but every week I've come to this microphone. Nope, don't have a car yet. Nope, don't have a car yet. Nope, don't have a car yet. I have one now. Now the thing is I have to sell my Sonata. And it is on Craigslist and on Facebook Marketplace. If you're interested, everything it's a pretty good car, except for the oil usage, a quart every 1,000 miles. Other than that, it's been a fantastic car. 90,000 miles. It's been a fantastic car. And I will insist, had it not started using oil, I would not have gone looking for another car. I can promise you that. So yeah, Jay, what a treat. Yeah, I know. I'm still, when I went down to look at it just to make sure it wasn't leaking anything this evening, I'm still a little bit like, did I really do this? Is this really my car? I'm still a little shocked, to be honest. All right, what else is going on? No trivia this past week. No trivia last Wednesday. Instead, myself and my team got together for dinner at a really nice place. I had a New York strip steak for the first time in years. It was fantastic. But we did make the playoffs. Our team finished in 4th place. You had to make in the top 5. And so the playoffs are on Wednesday, and we're all excited about this. This team has never made the playoffs before. It's been a team that's been around. Of course, I joined them in the fall last year. We just missed making the playoffs at the end of last year, and now we're in the playoffs. We're playing for $100 in cash on Wednesday. I think we can do it. I think we can win. I really, really believe that. We're good. We work well together. We enjoy each other's company. I think there's a lot of good camaraderie between us. And you can even see that even when we got together for dinner when there was no trivia. It's all good conversation. And I really don't know these people that well. We just see them every Wednesday, but I think we got along real well. But no trivia. And then on Saturday, no trivia. So this is the first week in quite a while where I didn't play any trivia. And also regarding my health, I woke up on Saturday morning at 170.0 pounds. So I've not yet got into the 160s, but I am on the verge. In fact, it may happen tomorrow morning because I really haven't eaten a lot today. I've been so excited about this car and everything, like just got my nerves going. But I got up at 170.0 pounds. I surely have not been that weight since 2010, 2009, something like that. And I did go out to the beach and got a little sun this weekend for about an hour. I found some time to get a little sun. First time I'd been out on the beach in a long time, but that's what I did. So a lot of good things going on, but I've been very busy with work, podcast stuff, all sorts of missing person stuff I've been working on as well. All right, let's get to, for the next hour and a half, now that the trivia and car and health stuff, everything going on in my life is out of the way. And by the way, my brother came over and stayed over last night. I think that's the first time he stayed over at this place in 7 years of me living in this place. And by the way, I will be living here for another year. Worked that out last week. And because of the construction and everything, my rent is not going up. My rent is going to stay the same for another year. And if the owners of this condo are out there and ever watch this live show, I just want to say thank you very much. Thank you for understanding and everything. So I'm excited about that. So I will be in this place at least until the end of April of 2027. Where do I want to start tonight? First of all, I have to tell you, I know it seems like it's been a while, and I guess technically it has. But I will be getting together with Dr. Telesco, Grace Telesco from Nova Southeastern University. I will be appearing on her show for the first time this year, next Thursday, not this Thursday, not, what is that, March 26th. This will be April 2nd. So next Thursday, a week and a half from now. And that will be on the Fischler College of Education School of Criminal Justice channel, the one where where she does her show. And of course, she has other guests on every week. But I will be appearing, and she is the one, of course, who picks what we talk about. It's her show, not my show. It's her show. I'm just making an appearance. And she asked me if I feel comfortable talking about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. So, yep, we're going to do it. She said, is that okay? I said, fine. Of course, I already did a special episode for all of you maybe a month ago, something like that. All the things you wanted to know about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance but are afraid to ask. I'm hoping that all of you have listened to that. Available everywhere that you find Unfound. It's in the same feed. But I did like top 5 things you need to know, something, that was what I did. And it went for about an hour. Hope you listened to it. And so probably I'm going to do a little bit of that, but hopefully Dr. Telesco and I can have a good conversation regarding Nancy's disappearance. Of course, it's still unsolved. She has not been found. The rumors continue to swirl. I saw that her family, her children have, made a plea that, let's try to keep this, her disappearance front and center. And, I get it, but, not everything can always stay front and center forever. And I'm not saying that Nancy's family needs to feel what it's like to for the media to slowly move away, as it does with all these disappearances, even when it comes to some of the well-known ones of regular people who weren't famous, or the parent of a famous person, or the Murrays and Brian Schaefer's out there. The media moves on. The world keeps spinning, and I don't know. I think that we are going to get to a time here, and I don't think it's too far from now, where it will go through a whole day. Even with those crazy YouTubers and everybody else, they'll move on to other things, and we'll have a whole day where Nancy Guthrie's disappearance is not mentioned at all. That day is coming. I don't think it's here yet, but that day is coming. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but that's just how these things go. I don't know what Nancy's family exactly wants everybody to do. Of course, her disappearance has gotten more coverage than any person's in the 21st century, at least here in the United States. And there are a lot of families who aren't famous, who don't have a lot of money and all of that, who would have killed, figuratively, to get the coverage that Nancy's disappearance has. So when her family starts asking, we don't want it to go out of the news cycle. We don't want it to go out of the news cycle. We don't want it to go out of the news cycle. Well, frankly, where were you before Nancy went missing? I'm happy that people get involved, but as I've stated before, it's unfortunately, disappearances are like cancer, in that it's amazing how many people don't take part in walks and raising money and petitions and everything else regarding cancer until they get it or somebody very close to them gets it. Right? It seems like it. Of course, there are people who aren't like that, but most people don't take an interest in it until it affects them. And then suddenly they're going to all, suddenly they want the government to put more money into cancer research, and they want this and they want that and everything. Meanwhile, a month before that, they weren't thinking about cancer at all, even though everybody knows that cancer exists. And this is why when it comes to disappearance the same way. Most people do not, if disappearance comes up on the screen, just don't take any interest at all. And that's why I think that the people that I have the greatest respect for within the true crime community, the disappearance community, I really respect those people who choose to get involved, even though a disappearance has never affected them at all. Granted, I guess I'm one of those people, but I know many of you who are watching tonight for the live show. I know many of you who listen to the podcast and download it every week and have been with Unfound for a long time. Most of those people have never had a disappearance happen to them and their family, friends. They don't know anybody who went missing, nothing. But they take an interest anyway, and I give you those people all the credit in the world. So I want Nancy Guthrie found. I hope she's found alive tonight. But really, her family really, really, really needs to check itself and get a little perspective when they start saying that the media coverage should continue the way it's been going. Because there's been 100,000 people who've gone missing, who are still missing in the United States, who didn't get any coverage. And how many, being that Savannah Guthrie's on the Today Show, how many disappearances have been featured on the Today Show? However it started, how many? Probably not very many, even though it's a news show. So I hear what they're saying, but they have to remember there's been like 100,000 people at least who came before them, who have been suffering not just for a month and a half or 51 days, but have been suffering maybe for 50 years. So be careful when you start asking for media coverage. They've gotten plenty. And certainly the police, as much as I can be critical of them, and for a lot of good reasons, as can all of you, certainly they've put in more work trying to find Nancy than any other person in the United States, like I said, at least in the 21st century, maybe even going back, further than that. We might have to go back to Jimmy Hoffa in the 1970s to find a disappearance of someone who's gotten this much attention. So, like I said, to the Guthrie family, be very careful about what your expectations are and what you want and everything else. You've gotten plenty. But Dr. Tina, and probably that will come up next Thursday, April 2nd. I'm sure that at least I plan for it to be at least a little part of the coverage next Thursday. I will state it again. I hope Nancy is found alive tonight, tomorrow at the latest. And if that happens, I think Dr. Telesco and I will still discuss her disappearance. We'll just have to make some alterations to the outline, but we'll get it done. But I just don't want anybody to think that, as you know, I don't need stuff to talk about. I got plenty to talk about. I can find all sorts of news stories to talk about. I hope she's found alive. And so, other news of some type can take her place. That's my attitude. And that's my attitude with all disappearances. I hope that, if they were all to get solved tomorrow by some magic or supernatural force or something, I want all of you to know I would be fine. I'd find something else to do. I just want all of you to know. I don't need for these disappearances to be mysteries. I would be much happier if all of them were solved. Trust me. Christina says, I think it would be interesting to poll the students on their opinions of the disappearance. We could do that. Christina, I hope I can remember that. But, of course, I'll talk about this next Monday. And good idea, Christina. D, and that's why I started today going over Pima County missing. Look at you, D. All right. Very good, D. Keeping yourself busy there in Oklahoma. And Lurch, ooh, nice Mustang in Arrest Me Red, no less. Yes. It's funny enough, this red, and if somebody's just getting here late, I don't mind showing another picture of it again. There it is again. Technically, this is funny. That red is called race red, RACE. Ford calls that race red. And yes, it is just as red as it sees here. It's like a fire engine. It's fire engine red. Ford calls it race red. So there you go. All right, let's move on to some other things. Want to remind all of you, although this is well off into the future, but it's less than 2 months now. I will be appearing at Private Icon. It's EYECON. Thank you, MT. In May 15th, 16th, and 17th. It is open to the public. There is a website. If you do a search for Private Icon, EYECON, you will find it. In fact, I think I posted that link in the discussion group on Facebook, maybe on the page as well. I will do that again, surely a few times. But if you want to come and partake, it's being held on the on the campus of Middle Tennessee State University. Somebody a few days ago corrected me. That is not Nashville. I'm flying into Nashville, but technically it's in Murfreesboro, where that university is. And that sticks out to me because that's where the disappearance of Devin Bond happened. He was unfortunately found deceased, young man. But I will be there. So if you'd like to show up, partake in what we'll be doing there. I don't know if I want to get into that just yet. But I think tickets can be bought, or whatever they call them, can be bought at the website. Come check it out. I will be there. Maybe you get to meet me. Maybe that'll be a thrill for you. And trust me, I'll be thrilled to meet you as well. That's once again May 15th, 16th, and 17th. My understanding is that's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So most of it is taking part on the 16th. So that's Saturday. Maybe there's some things that go on early on Sunday as well. So it's not like, if you want to go, you have to stay there all 3 days or something. Maybe you just have to be there for the day. Maybe you can drive in or something and drive back. But it is in Murfreesboro, or Middle Tennessee State University, of course, in the state of Tennessee. Also, you saw, I don't want to get too much into this, but there was a plane, I guess it was a plane crash, a plane wrecked. When you think plane crash, what fell out of the sky? No. At LaGuardia Airport, airport I've been to once back in 2003. A plane landed and a fire truck from the airport was crossing the runway at the same time. And this jet plowed into it. I think all of the firefighters in the truck got killed. I think, don't quote me on that. But on the plane, the pilot and co-pilot were killed. Nope, none of the passengers were killed. Of course, there were some passenger injuries, but the plane landed, and that truck was right there. So it was no different than somebody blowing a stop sign and T-bowing a vehicle, something like that. And I think that the airport is still closed down because there's a wrecked plane right there on the runway. What are they supposed to do? They do have another runway, but LaGuardia is a very busy airport, and I think what they've been doing, they've been diverting flights to JFK and to Newark. So anybody who's flying into New York City and was hoping to land at LaGuardia, yeah, that's not happening. Your plane's going to get diverted, or maybe the flight's canceled or something. They're traumatizing for everyone in the plane. I can't imagine. Yeah, certainly shouldn't have happened, and they're going to try to figure out why this happened. I think there was a mistake made by a air traffic controller. But it certainly could have been much worse if the plane had landed on top of the fire truck. That certainly could have been worse. They're very fortunate that the plane was actually on the ground and slowing down, even though it was still going at a very high rate of speed, that all the wheels had touched the ground and everything, because if it would have landed on the truck, that would have been a huge disaster. I have to believe that at least some people on the jet would be killed if something like that happened. So very sad. Still, flying is the safest way to travel. I used to have a fear of flying. I got over it by studying airplane crashes. That's a true story. I don't have a fear of flying now, but actually I haven't been in a plane in a while. When I go to see my dad, I usually drive like I did back in November. So it's been a while since I've been in a plane, but I will be flying to Private Icon in Tennessee in May. So I guess I'm going to be getting on a plane again eventually. So if you've seen any news on the plane crash, LaGuardia, keep your eyes on that and find out what exactly happened. All right, I want to talk about this murdered realtor. Of course, we don't do murders at Unfound. We do disappearances, but once in a while, I will talk about unsolved murder. Of course, I've talked about the Zodiac Killer and other things on this live show. This live show gives me a chance to get a little bit outside of the envelope that I've created with the podcast that comes out every Friday. So the murdered realtor, I'm going to read you an article, and I did go back and look at some articles that were written at the time of the disappearance back in the time of the murder in 2011. And well, you'll see. There's some things that I read that kind of surprised me. But I'm going to read this article that just came out. Of course, most articles pretty much the same that have been written over the past week. Authorities in Ohio have made an arrest nearly 15 years later after a realtor was fatally shot inside a model home she was showing. So she's a realtor. People coming to look at it, maybe a new development. She wasn't technically showing. It was a model home. It wasn't actually the home. So this is like a new one. They just have people. This is what the rest of them are going to look like. I think all of you understand what that is. But Kristen Ramsey, who I think at the time went by the name Chrissy Ramsey, 53 years old, 3 years old now, was arrested in connection with the killing of 27-year-old Ashley Okland on April 8th of 2011, the West Des Moines police said in a statement. And I want to make clear. So Kristen Ramsey was 37 at the time in 2011, but Ashley was 27. So at the time, the suspect who's been charged, she was 10 years older than the victim. Just I want to make sure you understand that. Okland was showing a model townhome in West Des Moines when she was killed, according to Crime Stoppers of Central Iowa. An employee of Rutland Homes, a home building company that had developed the property Okland was showing. So heard a commotion inside the model townhouse and went to check what happened. I want to come back to that. But you should know this Kristen Ramsey worked for the home builder. So she worked for this company, Rutland Homes, Rottlund. And the victim, Ashley, was a realtor. She did not. So they were both in the real estate business, but in different parts of the business. Ashley was a realtor, going around, driving around, showing people's homes. And Kristen Ramsey worked for a company that builds homes. So we're clear on that. So once again, an employee of Rutland Homes, a home building company that had developed the property Okland was showing, heard a commotion inside the model townhouse and went to check what happened. Inside, she found Okland on the floor and called 911. Okland, who had been shot twice, died after she was taken to the hospital, according to Crime Stoppers. So what is unclear to me, and I went back and looked at the how the story was written back in 2011, it's still not clear to me. Was Kristen Ramsey the one who claimed she heard the shots and ran in and saw Ashley murdered? Was it her, or was it some other employee, just an innocent employee, who ran in and saw Ashley there deceased? It's not clear to me the way this is written. So I guess what I'm saying here is, if somebody heard a shooting and ran into the house, and it was somebody, the woman who, somebody who didn't shoot Ashley, how did Kristen Ramsey get out of the house without being seen? Did people not realize she was there? Was her car not parked out front? Did she sneak in through a back door? It's unclear to me. So I'm inclined to think that, was she the one who became the witness? It's just hard to tell. Because we have to, once again, we have to realize, okay, Ashley shows up to show this model home. And then, obviously other people were there, and she's in the home by herself, and somebody hears shots. Oh my gosh, those are gunshots. What happened? Runs into the house. Ashley's there dead. How did the shooter get out without anybody seeing? So this is something. So I even have it in here in my notes. So the shooter ran away. How did nobody see Kristen run off? So this is why I'm thinking, was she actually the witness at the time? Now, there were other ear witnesses. Maybe other people, maybe there's other houses. Of course, gunshots are loud and can carry some distance. It's unclear to me how far these ear witnesses were away. But so it's still kind of the same question. Ashley is shot inside the house. If Kristen Ramsey did it, how did she get out of the house with anybody seeing? I don't know. So also the question, was she waiting in the home? Did she know Ashley was going to be there? So she knows Ashley. Let's say, I don't know. This is hypothetical. So she knows Ashley's coming over to the house. She goes to the house, maybe parks her car down the street, waits in there. Ashley comes in, shoots her. But once again, this doesn't explain how did she, get out of the house with anybody seeing. Of course, she would have a gun. Even if she's coming back out of the house, well, why are you leaving? Didn't you hear these shots? Where are you going, Kristen? It's a little hard to understand. So I'm inclined to think that Kristen pulled one of those, I heard the shots, then I ran inside, when really she was the one who shot Ashley and then pretended to hear the shots, and then come running in. I think. Not totally sure. What's also unclear to me is what changed between 2011 and 2026. Of course, 2011, of course, DNA, well known at the time. I haven't read anything about a gun being left behind or anything else. Surely they would have done forensics. They know that it's a murder. What changed between 2011, what changed recently to charge Kristen Ramsey with this? That is very unclear to me. Has she done something? Did she, of course, she's innocent until presumed guilty, or she's presumed innocent until proven guilty. That's funny. Did she say something to somebody if they're now suspecting her? Did she, maybe she wanted some other woman killed and maybe didn't want to do it herself this time, maybe tried to hire a hitman? Did her conscience get to her? Did she intimate it does she have a boyfriend or somebody? And, she thought she could trust this guy, and she claimed, she confessed to what she did, and then he went to the police. It's unclear. That news is not out there anywhere as to what it finally was. Was she a suspect the whole time? Maybe she was. That still would not explain what pushed police finally over the edge to charge her. So that part of it is unclear. And of course, now a motive. Now, you should know, Ashley Okland, I would call her to be an attractive young woman at the time, for my taste. And could that have something to do with it? Was there some sort of love triangle going on here? It very well may be. Of course, we know people are getting shot and killed all the time, or stabbed and strangled for cheating and 2-timing and 3-timing and everything else. Very common. Relationships, number one cause of disappearances. Also a very common cause for murders. But the counter argument to that would be, well, if this were a love triangle, You'd think they would have figured that out back in 2011. If they would have found out that Ashley, they would have her phone records, they would have access to her email. She is the victim. And they would see, oh, she was texting with this married guy. She was emailing with this married guy. Maybe they could even get his financial records, maybe meeting at a hotel or something like that. You'd think if, let's say Kristen Ramsey's boyfriend was cheating on her, you'd think this would have been exposed pretty quickly. And this whole thing, they would have been able to show where Kristen was at the time. And of course, they would know that she was in the real estate business or in the selling homes business, just like Ashley was. You'd think this all would have come apart very quickly, especially since the shooting was done in a model home that so many people would even be there, and only so many people would have access to it, on and on and on. So it very well may be that's what the motive was. But reading about this, it's just not obvious. If it ends up being some sort of love triangle between the three that was going on at the time, I'm going to be a little surprised, because I wouldn't think that kind of thing would go unsolved for 15 years. So what then else could it be? Well, it could just be jealousy. Did the two actually know each other? I think they did. I think that I even made although I couldn't tell if it was altered or two pictures spliced together, I did see a picture of them, the two of them together back at some time, of course, before the murder. So did they know each other? Did they not know each other? Of course, they didn't work for the same companies, although their paths might have crossed, because she's a real estate agent and she works for a home building company, certainly. Would they have met at some industry function in Des Moines or elsewhere? Certainly can understand that, because it's not like they went to high school together. I mean, there's 10 years separating them. They couldn't have gone to college together. So motive is a little hard to understand right at this moment. Now, I did see in one of the articles that was written not long after the murder is that police were looking for a scruffy looking young man in a black SUV, and Ashley had been seen talking to him multiple times, I guess, in the area where this model home was. I have no idea what came of that. I didn't see any follow-up articles stating that the police had tracked this guy down to figure out, if he's a good suspect or not. I don't know. But it does seem at the time in 2011 into 2012, they were not looking for a woman. They were looking for a guy and a young man. So young man, I guess that might be considered to be around Ashley's age, which was 27 at the time. But that is not who they have charged. So are we going to find out that maybe this scruffy looking young man, could that have been some guy connected to Kristen in some way? Maybe this is the other man. Maybe this was the guy that Kristen was dating, and then he's, spending time with Ashley. Maybe. But I keep going back to, if so, you'd think this would have been solved 15 years ago, very, very quickly, some jealous rage, something like that. What else could it be? Once again, jealousy. Did Ashley, screw Kristen over somehow with a business deal? Pick one. But you also have to understand something, that women murdering women, at least in the United States, fairly rare. Of course, men killing men is number one. Men killing women is number two. Men killing multiple people, both men and women, number three. And then finally, after we get men killing all different types of people, then we finally get to women killing people. Men are way more violent than women are. But of course, we know women kill people too. But you have to understand that a woman killing another woman, at least in the United States, is a very small sliver of the murder pie. And so when we look at this, no different than a disappearance, you have to start thinking, well, what were the circumstances of this that brought these two women together? Because the other thing we have to remember is that, these were not two people who, would have, had criminal records, because, I don't, probably in Iowa, you can't get a real estate license if you have a felony on your record. Probably not. Probably these women not involved in drugs. Maybe one of them had a drinking problem or something, but the odds of this being over drugs or alcohol, legal activity, unlikely. Whereas I think if we were to look at those murders committed by women killing other women, you'd think that addictions and felonies and things, probably these women have that in their history. So that's what makes, I think, this even rarer than maybe people even realize. So being though that Kristen Ramsey is not a hardened criminal or anything, if she's guilty, if she did it, I don't know if this is actually going to go to a trial or not. We'll just have to see. Of course, I will try to keep up on it, but I'm a little busy. I do this podcast and do other things. I'll try to keep up on this, and maybe some of you will as well. But it's just not clear to me. Like I said, it's not clear to me. Did she pretend to be the witness at the time? Or was there actually a real witness who ran in and somehow Kristen was able to avoid this witness? It's not clear to me. And then figuring out a motive, not exactly clear to me either. Hello, Rockford. How are you doing tonight? Did you see the picture I put up of the car, being that everybody else saw it? My mind went to a business deal or professional dispute for what broke the case. I'd first expect technology advance, and second, a mutual acquaintance calling in a tip. That acquaintance came around 15 years later. Yes, mate. Like I said, could have been pillow talk. Kristen's in a relationship, and in one of those intimate moments, she's feeling very vulnerable and everything, and said, "Yeah, remember Ashley Okland who got married? Who got murdered 15 years ago? Yeah, I did that. Could be." It would be interesting to know with technological advancements what that would exactly mean, Rockford. Certainly the internet has changed a little bit, but cell phone stuff, has that changed that much in 15 years? I don't know. Maybe. So there it is. Ashley Okland. Family might get some justice here, but maybe Kristen Ramsey didn't do it. Maybe they only arrested her because they think that she knows who actually did do it. Maybe she was an accomplice or something. So there you go. The murdered realtor. I want to move on. Somebody had emailed me. It was before last week's show, and I didn't get to it, but I'm going to get to it now. This is that football coach. Remember this guy? What is his name? I know it's here in the article somewhere. Travis Turner. He is still missing. Don't forget, he is still missing. And remember that seemingly he was doing things, sexting with an underage student, explicit photos and all of that. So I'm going to read this article that was recently done and want to make some comments on it. Missing Virginia football coach Travis Turner allegedly sexted a 16-year-old student explicit photos of his genitalia, the girl's family has claimed. Turner, the 46-year-old married father of 3 who vanished late last year, I think that was actually in October, right? As cops were on the way to grill him over child porn and exploitation accusations, allegedly sent the disturbing X-rated messages over a 3-month stretch, the Sun reported. The head coach at Union High School disappeared almost as soon as the allegations were reported after the girl was overheard talking about it in the library. Turner hasn't been seen since he vanished into a wooded area with a gun on November 20th. That was so November, okay. As police were heading to the Big Stone Gap home to question him as part of a child sex crimes investigation. Well, I'll say it again. He is still missing. And a lot of people have been looking for him. But a question, I don't think I've talked about this since maybe November or early December of last year. But a big question is, did he have assistance in this? Did somebody help him? Did his wife help him? Did some friend help him get out of the area? Could be, but I doubt it. Certainly there's nothing scientific that I know of that would rule that out, but what exactly are we talking about here? Who is, I guess maybe his wife would be the most likely person to help him. But wouldn't, after 6 months and all this heavy pressure and everything, would that plan not fall apart? Would it not be easy? Surely there would be enough reason to get a warrant or a subpoena or wiretaps or something like that to figure out if she's having any contact with him over the last 6 months or 5 months. Maybe we might be open to maybe a sibling of his, of a brother or something, might have helped him get out of the area. But, you know, if this was something else, if this were a robbery or something like that, or some sort of white-collar crime, I might be open to the idea of a friend or family member helping, but not when it's child porn. Not when it's, because the allegations had gotten out. I think people knew what was going on. And like it says, he hasn't been seen. The police were already headed to his home to question him. The investigation already started. Have to believe that maybe it was already out there in the ether of that area that, what he had done. What kind of real help is he going to get? Maybe from some other child porn person. But who is that person? Wouldn't that person be caught up in this as well? Wouldn't that person be taking off as well? You'd think. Rockford, is there any reason to believe he was alive within days after he took off? I assumed he walked off and did himself in. I was going to get to that, Rockford. He did take a gun, but that can be interpreted a couple different ways. Yes, it could be interpreted as, yes, he walked off and shot himself somewhere. Or it could be interpreted as he's going on the run. And if the police track him down, maybe he's going to do a suicide by cop. So it's not necessarily automatic that he would shoot himself and commit suicide. Although I have to believe that maybe statistically, that is most likely. That's what I would say with that. So I, going down that in my notes, well, is he still alive? Well, he took a gun for a reason, but here's one of those things, and I have this, and I think we can apply this to a lot of disappearances for walk-offs, people who leave. Doesn't necessarily have to be because they're in trouble with the law, with child porn or anything else. But I have to believe that at least some of these people who walk off, maybe they're depressed or whatever, they give it a chance. They walk off. How do I feel about this? I feel like committing suicide, but am I really going to do this? And I'm inclined to believe that there is a certain percentage of people who, if they are able to convince themselves, you know what? I'm walking off, and I think I can make a go of this somewhere else, changing my name, then the suicide doesn't happen. So it very well may be for this guy that in the moment he thought, I'm going to go to jail. I did these things. Of course, a lot of these people who do these things don't see anything wrong with it, and they're just thinking, well, people just don't understand. But I could be convinced if they keep walking into the woods or whatever, and they haven't shot themselves, and they take another step, haven't killed themselves, another step, they haven't killed themselves, and they don't hear the sirens wailing, and they don't see the lights flashing, they could convince themselves, you know what, maybe I can go on the run and change my name and everything else and leave this area. This guy, Travis Turner, goes somewhere else and start a new life. I think this does happen sometimes. People who run off thinking they're going to commit suicide, then don't because they have a change of heart or something. So I am open to this regarding Travis, that took his gun planning to kill himself, but then he started thinking, you know what? I don't have to kill myself. I think I can outfox the cops. I've always wanted to, maybe he, given he's doing things, maybe he didn't really want to be married and be a father anyway. This is my chance to be a single guy again. Could be. And maybe what would support that? Well, of course, these searches were done. He walks off with a gun. I mean, if you're going to kill yourself, how far is a person going to walk before he killed himself? Killing himself. That he hasn't been found yet, I guess, could make us believe, well, maybe he is still alive. And he's out there somewhere. What I would say if the police were to come to me, I really would not have any much more to offer than I think you just have to keep searching the woods. Get an idea of what he was wearing. Of course, it's November. It's going to be a little chilly, especially at night. Look at the weather for that night. Did he wear a jacket? Wasn't he wearing a jacket? All of this would mean something. It certainly would. But I would just keep everybody. Yeah, I think you just have to keep searching that area. Unless they have different information, there's just really nowhere else to look. But do I think he had help? Probably not. That was a thought. Well, did his wife help him, everything? Like I said, if this was something different, if this was stealing artwork or, something like that, then I could see maybe those people getting help. But a sex offender, I doubt it. All right. Let's talk about the Markleys. This would be John and Shelley, a very rare type of disappearance where we have two parents who go missing and their children are left behind alive. Very rare. Of course, we have many disappearances where one parent goes missing, maybe due to foul play or not. But to have two parents go missing and the children be fine, they're still around. Of course, we've had some families who have gone missing who ended up deceased. But to have two parents, the parents of 5 kids, go missing and the kids are left behind alive, very rare. So this is why it caught my eye to be discussed tonight. John Markley was last seen with his wife of 16 years, Shelley Markley, at their home on Greenville Road in rural Bristolville, Ohio. And I've not looked it up on a map or anything. They were last seen on December 15th of 1995. So over 30 years ago. Man, it seems like 1995 was just yesterday. I was just 25 years old. It was an interesting year. I went to Hawaii in the year 1995. Their 5 children went to school in the morning, and when they returned that afternoon, the house was unlocked, and their parents were gone. The Markleys' red and silver 1990 Chevy pickup was also missing, and there was no note. Upstairs in the Markley residence, their gun cabinet was found open. It was normally kept shut and locked at all times. A small safe in the master bedroom was also open, with birth certificates and other papers scattered around the room. The beds were unmade, and some of John and Shelley's clothes were on top of their bed. A coffee pot in the kitchen was still cooking and had nearly boiled dry. So, of course, if you don't know this, of course, now that I'm drinking coffee these days, look at me. I have a coffee maker. Of course, you leave it on there all day or something. The temperature is hot enough that eventually the water will evaporate and, it'll be nothing left. So that's what is here, what they're saying here. John's wristwatch, which he normally wore all the time, was on a shelf above the stove. Shelley's cigarette case, and lighter were on the kitchen counter. She normally took her cigarettes with her whenever she left the house, like any smoker, of course. In the garage, the tarps that normally covered John's 1978 Corvette were missing. He never left the car uncovered. The Markley children initially believed their parents would return in a short time. John's twin sister died of cancer 2 days before he and Shelley disappeared, so on December 13th. Calling hours at the funeral home were at 5:30 p.m. the day they went missing, and the funeral was scheduled for the day after. John was very distraught over his sister's death and planned to go to the funeral home with his children. The children went to their aunt and uncles nearby and waited for their parents to return. They went to the funeral home without John and Shelley after the couple did not arrive home. Their aunt and uncle reported John and Shelley's disappearance to the police at 12:30 a.m. the next day. So like in the really early morning, just turning over into the next day, December 16th. John's missing truck was later found locked and abandoned in the parking lot of a store in Bristolville, Ohio, 10 miles from their home. The keys were missing. Inside the cab was the couple's cellular phone, and it was interesting to have a cellular phone in 1995. And in the bed of the truck was a tire for a semi-trailer truck and the tarps that had been taken off the Corvette. The last transaction made on the Markley's checking account was at 10:36 a.m. on the day of the disappearance, after their kids had gone to school. 2 hours, okay. A personal check for $1,000 made out to cash and signed by Shelley was cashed at the Bank One in Bloomfield, Ohio, leaving an $865 balance in the account. The bank teller at the drive-through window stated she remembered seeing the Markleys pull up in the pickup. John was driving. Shelley was seated between her husband and another man, so she was sitting in the middle, whom the teller was unable to identify or describe. John was employed as an independent truck driver at the time of his disappearance. He had no criminal record and no life insurance, and his and Shelley's home was fully paid for. They left behind a freezer that had been stocked full of food for the upcoming winter. One of John's co-workers claimed to have been holding them for a $10,000 ransom, but authorities later decided the man was an opportunist who had not been involved in the Markley's disappearance. He was charged with extortion. John and Shelley's cases remain unsolved. Foul play is suspected. So once again, a very, very rare type of disappearance where parents go missing and the children are alive. All 5 of them. Of course, I'm going to guess I don't know what their ages were at the time. So, who knows? I just don't know. I didn't look that up. So it's important to understand also that it's not included. This is what I read from the Charlie Project. It's important to understand what's not mentioned here is, unfortunately, the family disturbed the home. So much like what was made, in some disappearances where people come in and they start doing their own investigation or whatever. After the children got home and they weren't there, family came around in. And so if we want to call the home a crime scene, although it doesn't look like anything violent happened there, that home was disturbed. So things were not left, even though I just talked about a variety of issues. It's clear that the family of John and the families of John and Shelley did go over there and start looking around, moving things around. So there's that. So we have to be open to the idea when it comes to this safe and some of these other things. They might not have been in that situation and looked that way when the Markleys left the house, where they were forced to or by choice. We don't know. We should also note what's not mentioned here. A gun was missing, being that we just talked about the Travis Turner guy. A gun was missing, but most of their other stuff was there. But I don't know if they determined if anything else was missing. Did anybody know if they had cash in the safe or anything like that? I don't know. But there was a gun was missing. And as was stated in the article, but I want to restate it again. I want to restate it. There was money still left in their checking account. So we have to remember that. So if I were to interview, let's say one of the children, of course, this is 30 years ago, so some of their kids could be in their 40s now. Here are some questions that I would be asking them. I don't know if they would have the answers or not, but here are a bunch of questions that come to my mind. Who were John and Shelley? In doing as much work as I could in preparing for tonight, I really didn't get a good idea about who they were, what their interests were, what their personalities. Of course, John, I know he was an overstate trucker. Did Shelley have a job? If so, what? How often, was John out of town driving this truck? This is important to me. Were John and Shelley involved in any drug activity, even if it was just marijuana or whatever? This is something that certainly I would want to know, and I'm going to come back to this topic. What exactly was going on in their lives in the month before? Of course, this is over 30 years ago now, so you got to give it a shot. What was going on in their lives in the month before? Were they have any problems with any neighbors, anything like that? What was their money situation? And like I said, I'm going to come back to this money thing. What was their money situation? What was the outside understanding of their family and friends? How were John and Shelley doing in contrast to what was eventually found that was going on in their life? It's something. Of course, the truck was eventually found 10 miles away in a store parking lot. Did they go to the store? Were they familiar with the store? Does anybody know? Why that store? Anybody have any idea? Roger, if you're still in here, I know it's like a half hour ago you posted that. Eddie, what do you think of Nancy Guthrie? Yeah, I've already talked about it multiple times, Roger. I would say go to my podcast either on iTunes or Spotify. And about 3 weeks ago, I released about an hour-long episode on that, Roger, if you want to check that out. I've just talked about it, and plus I already talked about it earlier in the show. This bank, how often did they go to the bank? How often did they use the drive-through? Me, when I go to the bank, I never use the drive-through. Of course, I rarely go to the bank. I was in the bank, my PNC branch this weekend to get the check that I eventually used to buy the Mustang this morning. But I didn't do that through. I actually got in my car, out of my car, and walked inside. It just seemed like the right thing to do for something like that. But I really, most people do online banking today. These days, certainly not back in 1995. You couldn't do that. So, how often did they go to this bank, and how often did they use the drive-through? I know it's very obscure, but what else can you do? What did John and Shelley usually do when the kids went to school? Was Shelley working? Did she have a job? Was John taking some time off from truck driving? What exactly was the expectation? Of course, we're getting to Christmas time where they may be going to go do some Christmas shopping. Buddy, have any idea about what they could have been planning to do that day, or what they had been doing in the days before that when the kids went to school? How long had John been home from driving a truck? Now, you should know that, I've stated this before, both of my brothers were truck drivers. I did not know my brother Michael when he was a truck driver, but I certainly knew my brother Brian as a truck driver. In fact, I rode in a truck with him many times, mainly in the Southwest United States. And, of course, it's not unusual for a truck driver to be gone days at a time. Even with my brother Brian, now I'm not getting into this, but, it would not be unusual for my brother Brian to not be home for quite a while. Just driving back and forth. And of course, you have sleepers in those trucks, and you can eat at rest stops and everything else. If you're a truck driver and you can keep yourself busy enough, you really don't even need a home. Some of these truck stops are really nice. Loves or whatever else. They have nice facilities for truckers. They get their own special areas. And they can get a shower and everything else, massages and everything else. So, if you're a truck driver, over-the-road truck driver in the United States, driving from one coast to the other, you can do pretty well. And you don't really need to have a home. So, how long had it been since John had been back to Ohio? And also, of course, were there any forensics done on this truck, their truck, that was left at this store? I'm guessing there were. Of course, this would have been right around when DNA was becoming a thing. But of course, this has not led to John and Shelley being found. But something happened. This wasn't an accident. So, what is my analysis? Where can we go regarding all of this? And I'm going to get right to it. There's something about the Markley's finances that doesn't seem right to me. They had 5 kids. I don't have any kids, but what parents tell me is kids are expensive. Right? Kids are expensive. And although you may be able to cut down on some of the costs when you have 5 of them, maybe handing down clothes and everything else, you still got 5 mouths to feed. And kids are expensive. Maybe one of the reasons I haven't had any. But he's an over-the-road truck driver. Truck drivers certainly can make decent money. Certainly. But 5 kids, and as it was said here, their house was paid off. And he had a relatively new truck, a 1990, of course. Once again, being that, just as an example, I'm a single guy. I don't have any kids. I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have any pets. I'm not poor. I'm driving. I just bought a car today that's 15 years old. John and Shelley have 5 kids, and he has a truck that's only 5 years old. Plus, their house is paid off. And seemingly at the time, John was at home. And you know, the one thing about a truck driver, you don't make any money when you're sitting at home. If I were to be asked to analyze this, and and as it says, I'm starting this consultation service that I'm going to be doing, missingpersonsconsulting.com. And the children of John and Shelley sent me all this information. The first thing that I would be getting into in the finances, and I would this is where I'd be going. I would be telling their children, I think, what can you tell me about your parents' finances? What can you tell me about these? Because looking at them, it's a little hard to understand how they were making ends meet. And that's why I would need to know more about Shelley. What was she doing? Now, if you're going to tell me that Shelley was, if they hit the lottery, or that she was some investment banker or a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, I don't think she was. Then maybe some of this starts to make sense. But just in reading this, I'm inclined to believe that they might have had a source of income that was not legal. Rockford, on my list, underrated. Not much coverage, missing cases, the Markleys. All right, so how weird is it that I pick it, Rockford? Listened to a quality podcast on it a few months ago. My mind went to drugs and an angry competitor. Okay, I'm going to get to that. Rockford, maybe if you want to post it, what the podcast was. I usually don't like that stuff, but if it was a quality podcast, I'll take your word on it. What podcast was it that covered this? I had no idea. I didn't even look. So I'm concerned about the finances of these two people. And of course, the first thing everybody's going to go to is drugs. Marijuana, maybe, if we want to go back to the 1990s. We have to remember, John is an overstate trucker. Trucks are not searched like planes are. If you're, and like I said, I know more about trucking than probably I should, simply because I had 2 brothers that did it, and specifically one where I got to ride around with them, and I saw a lot of crazy things riding around with my brother Brian when he was a truck driver. A lot of things go on at truck stops at 3 a.m. I'm here to tell you. And if he was running marijuana from some place to some place, once again, this is all conjecture. But if you're going to tell me a married couple with 5 kids has a 1978 Corvette, has a relatively new pickup, their house is paid off, they have, and it says in here the refrigerator, they were stocked up with food and everything. What exactly was going on here? Were they getting some public assistance or something like that? What was going on? So I would be telling their kids, I'm sorry I have to say this, but I think that you have to be open to the idea that your parents might have been involved in something illegal. It may be drugs. It could be other things. So in addition to that, I think that we have to be a bit doubtful about the sighting at the bank. Certainly if we're going to think it was foul play, then the sighting, may very well be true, but it also strikes me it could be just confirmation bias. Do we only believe it because we believe it's foul play? Do we believe this sighting simply because we say, well, two parents would surely never leave their 5 kids behind? Well, we can't be like that. We have to think more critically. We don't know how soon this teller was questioned. And given that this was the Markley's bank, she may have just been thinking of some other day when they came through. And it very well may be that there was a third guy there, but didn't have anything to do. It wasn't even the disappearance date. So we have to be very, very careful before we start thinking, well, it's foul play and thus the sighting may be true, or, well, it's some guy who's never come forward, it must be foul play. You can't think of it that way. I also note, at least the way it's written here, the teller says it's a man, but then couldn't describe him. Well, how could you determine that it was a man if you couldn't describe him? How was it that you saw Shelley's face and John's face, but not this person's face? It very well may have happened. It very well may be true, but I'm not going to believe it just because of this. The standards just have to be a little higher. In addition, if they were running off, let's say if John and Shelley decided we didn't want to be parents anymore, they're going to go join the circus. Why exactly would they, they got $1,000. I mean, there is, of course, a paper trail that they did get $1,000 out of the bank in cash that day. Why would they leave the other $800 in there if they were running off? It seems unlikely to do that. But on the other hand, of course, the counter argument to that would be if they were being extorted, if they were being forced to take money out of the account, would this person not want all of it? Would this, in addition, I know $1,000, if somebody wants to give me $1,000 tonight, I'll take it. But what exactly then are we talking about here? $1,000. If they owed somebody money, I don't know what condition that 1978 Corvette was in, but could they not just have sold that if, once again, if they were having problems, once again, with a debtor, illegal stuff, could they not have gotten out of it that way? Did they have to go to the bank and actually show their faces and get $1,000 in cash and everything? So there are, you could think it's foul play, but then I think there are some counter arguments that say, okay, it's foul play, but in addition, maybe the biggest issue here is that Shelley took off, went missing without her cigarettes. This is like Nancy Moyer from last week, coincidentally, where her cigarettes and lighter were left behind as well. What do we know? Smokers are addicts. You just are. All you smokers out there, you're addicts. And the sooner you quit that, why are you letting something like that control your life? Why are you doing that? Why are you letting an inanimate object control your life? But it would seem to mean that John and Shelley were forced out of their house. She didn't have time to bring the cigarettes with her, or probably wasn't going to be allowed to do that anyway. But then what's hard to understand is what person is going to force them out of the house and say, well, we're going to go to the bank. What does everybody know banks have usually? Well, they have employees and they have video cameras and everything else. Why would somebody take that chance? It's hard to understand. Now, obviously it worked out, but we're still not sure at this sighting. we don't know exactly what happened with this $1,000. We just don't know. Yes, it very well may be that John and Shelley showed up at the bank sometime with a third guy in the truck, but it very well could be that on this particular day, it could have just been John and whoever, maybe is the best suspect in this disappearance. So we just don't know. So I think the cigarettes are a big deal. It does lean toward a forced kind of idea. Now, why? Unclear. Here is the funny thing is this. Even though I've made fun of this guy, and I think many of you give this guy way, 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 way too much credit, this does on the surface at least seem like an Israel Keys type of thing, doesn't it? There, I said it. That should please all of you who are disgusted that I just don't think. The thing is, he was only 17 at the time I checked. But here's my best guess. I do think that the Markleys were involved in something illegal. It's easy for me to default to drugs, but if you have an 18-wheeler, certainly a lot of different things. Maybe John was just stealing stuff out of these loads that he was carrying and selling it, and that's how they were making money. Happens. Very common. I don't know. Maybe that would be a good question. What kind of products was he hauling? What was he doing here? Was it, what kind of products are we talking about? But I could see if you're underhanded, he could have been taking things out of the loads and selling them, and that's how he was making extra cash on the side. But I'm inclined to think that this disappearance has something to do. Remember, John's sister died of cancer 2 days before this. And here is the best guess that I can make. Rockford Trace Evidence Podcast. Okay, fine. Level head, not sensational. Okay. MT agrees with you and Rockford. And yes, I know that the host of Traced Evidence has referenced Unfound, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Here's my idea regarding the disappearance of the Barkleys. I think I do not. Lisa, am I late? Just got home from Florida vacation. Yeah, you're late, Lisa. Yes, you're very late. You're very, very late. I showed off the car I got today and everything, and you missed it. So there. I think somebody knew. So I think John and Shelley probably in illegal dealings they were doing, probably got wrapped up with the wrong person or group. I think John's sister dies, and so then they know that John is going to be coming home. He's going to be back in the area. And they see this as an opportunity to level some sort of debt. I think Rockford brought up, is it a competitor? I don't know if I want to go in that direction. But did they owe somebody money? Or was there a belief that John and Shelley, maybe because of their kids, maybe are thinking about trying to go straight on this? Or maybe they were going to roll over on some others? This is the direct, granted, not the most solid of theories I've ever created in my mind. But I can't get away from the idea his sister dies, they go missing, and maybe somebody thought, oh, John's going to be back in town. Now we can go over there and confront both John and Shelley about something. And if they don't do what we want, here's what's going to happen. That seems to be a very likely choice, because once again, we have to think of it this way. He's a truck driver. They're gone most of the time. What are the odds that a robber, burglar, whatever, shows up and John happens to be there too? In addition, it does seem, given that the safe was opened and everything else, it does seem that the person had some sort of knowledge of the house. In addition to that, this person, let's say that the teller sighting is true, this person took their truck. I mean, did the person not show up at their place in their own vehicle? It's hard to, you think about these things, it's hard. It almost makes it that, maybe this has to be a group operation. It does seem that somebody went over to their house that day. Well, that means then their truck got taken. So who drove the other vehicle away? I think it had something to do with money. I think it had something to do with illegal activity. It seems that they were living beyond their means, the way I read it here. Maybe they owed money. Somebody didn't, as Rockford said, I'll say it again, didn't like the competition. But that's probably the best I can do with this. Now, of course, the counter argument would be, even though they were still missing, you'd think it was something like that, then the police would have figured out the illegal stuff, very early on. Rockford, thank you, Lisa. That's very kind. I know you're late, Lisa, but I appreciate it. Thank you. You're friends with me on Facebook anyway. I did a video and everything, Lisa. You can see it on there. Rockford, maybe a derivative of the Laura Bible Ashley Freeman case, but kids left unharmed. Yeah, the kids were gone before they showed up. Could be. Kids go to school. The bad people show up. You owe us money. Maybe John tells them, I'll go to the bank and get it for you. And then one of them says, no. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to go to the bank, but I'm going to ride with you and make sure you do it and make sure you don't do any funny stuff. You don't send any secret messages to the teller. Maybe, if we're to believe this sighting. But I think this is foul play connected to illegal activity. Pretty sure. Rockford, if you can say anything that you think I'm missing here regarding this, anything you want to add to this discussion on the Markleys, even though I know we only have 7 minutes left. Being that you did listen to this, maybe that'll be something I listen to on the treadmill tomorrow, just to get some more information. One thing I do want to go over very quickly, and then we'll get to Friday's disappearance. I want to tell you again about the consulting that I've started. The website is missingpersonsconsulting.com. And here's how it works. You go there, you hit the book a consultation button there on the screen. You can read, I have a video on there and everything, a little write-up about myself. I had this the site built, but I've gotten good enough now that I can mess around with it myself. Somebody comes and hits the book of consultation. It takes them to my Calendly, however you say that, site where they can pick their day and time. There is a fee up front. After they are done signing up, they will be sent a form to fill out. Some yes and no questions, but also some essay questions. Describe the disappearance. Tell me everything that's been done and gone with everything that's gone on, as much as you want to say. They submit that to me, and I go over it. Do my own thing with newspapers.com and do whatever I think I have to do. to give them good advice. And then on that day that's been arranged, that they've picked out on my schedule, I have an hour-long Zoom meeting with them, of course, that will be recorded. They will get a recording of it after, where I go over the information. I analyze the disappearance. I tell them, where I think the best areas are for further research, further investigation. I will, of course, tell them, if they tell me things the police done, I'll say, yeah, that probably shouldn't have been done. Of course, I'll go into a lot of things that you've heard me say before, like with grading searches regarding dogs. And I will eventually, by the end of the hour in talking to them, I will pick out the best things to do, the best way forward in their own investigation. Of course, they can take it to the police or do whatever they think they have to do with it. But I will surely give them a lot of clarity on their disappearance. And maybe even from that, they can also figure out some things that also need to be done. And as you know, I've kind of been doing this anyway. It's, of course, depends on the guest for the podcast. But this is the direction I am going now. And so if you think somebody would benefit from my in-depth looking at all the information, and I, of course, instead of me being a reporter, in media, I would be looking at this as an analyst only. I'm not looking to set it all up, to ask them questions in a public setting. This would be, here's what's going on, and here's what you should do. There would not be anything about how are we going to handle this in a public situation. It would all be behind the scenes. So once again, the site is missingpersonsconsulting.com. Rockford, I think you hit all the high points. I'm with you on the analysis. Okay, Rockford. Analysis. Okay, Rockford. So I hope you will, if you know anybody out there, of course, I've sent out some group emails to former guests of Unfound and other people. But you can go check out the website right now. Like I said, there's a video on there. missingpersonsconsulting.com. All right, let's go to this Friday's disappearance. I'll be doing the interview tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be the disappearance of Tanner Sharp. This is a young man. He went missing on April 25th of 2010. Went missing from California. And Tanner was a nice enough guy, but he seemed to have a problem telling the truth. In that he was originally from Kansas, and he was going to college. He wanted to go to college in Colorado, and his grandmother offered to pay for it. Well, yeah, he went to Colorado, but he didn't go to college. He just took her money and spent it. And eventually his family found out, and it was good on Tanner. He actually ended up paying his grandmother totally back. And then he moved to Texas for a little while. Well, then he moved to California to live with his sister, who will be the guest. His sister, Summer, will be the guest with her husband. And I don't think they had any, maybe she just had a child at the time or something. But Tanner moved in with them. And things were fun for a little while, but he was just really just mooching off of them. Didn't get a job or anything. He was given an ultimatum, and he said, no, don't worry about it. I'm going to be leaving anyway. I'm going to go back to Kansas and work with a friend of mine. They were fine. They sent him on his way. Well, guess what? That was a lie. He did not go to Kansas. He actually instead went right down the road, just a few miles away, to a different city, Galt, California. And that is where he disappeared. His car was eventually found in a creek outside of Galt, California. So that's going to be the disappearance for this week. Like I said, I'm interviewing his sister Summer tomorrow. But it's interesting that I'm very open to the idea that this disappearance has something to do with one of the most well-known novels of the 20th century. And it's very well known. It's widely read, but it's also it's a controversial novel too. And you should know, when I told Summer this in our conversation, it kind of a little bit blew her mind. And this is why it sometimes helps to have obscure knowledge when it comes to disappearances. So once again, Tanner Sharp, April 25th, 2010. He went missing from Galt, California. His car was found in the creek there. His sister Summer will be the guest. She's being interviewed tomorrow. And then I'm going to do Haydar Abu Shakra's interview on Wednesday. So finally, some of these things are coming together after some sicknesses and some things. So that's all I have for you tonight. 2 hours goes fast. I'm just because I wanna and I can. It's my show. I'm going to show you another picture of the car. And that's it. Be careful out there. Keep your heads on swivels. Do not end up on my podcast. Charlie, say hi to the kids for me. I hope you had a great time seeing your parents in Ohio. And that's all I have for tonight. Yeah, say hi to the kids, your sons for me, Charlie. And we'll do this all again next Monday. Good night.